allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So as you can tell from our agenda and also from the setup, we have a very important meeting today. So I would just remind everyone, if they have a question or comment, to please wait to be recognized by the chair of whichever board you're directing your question at. The select board will begin its meeting now with the town administrator report and to discuss budget preparation, and then at 6:30 or thereabouts, we will convene the tri-meeting with the advisory board, the Templeton Elementary School Building Committee, and the Narragansett Regional School Committee as well. So at this time, I will turn the floor over to our town administrator for his report.
Okay.
Or do you want to do this? Yeah, sure, whatever you would.
Everyone hear me? This is an upgrade, an update of the revenue estimate for the next fiscal year. So we are about to begin the budget process. And so what I've done is I've given you actuals. I think most of you on the school committee, advisory board, and board of selectmen received a copy of this by email. There are some extra copies over here if anyone would like to have a copy. So what we've done is basically taken the actuals for 2012, actuals for 13, the actuals for 14. These numbers are taken off the tax recap sheet, so we at least know that the state considers them accurate. We've also taken the budgeted amounts for fiscal 15, the current fiscal year, and here's the draft. This is what we're all about tonight, the draft for fiscal 2016, and I put a dollar difference column over here. I hope you can see it. Since I distributed this sheet originally several weeks ago, there have been a few changes, most of them coming from the assessors. The assessors have informed me that although we didn't include any new growth in the revenue picture for fiscal 2014, there was in fact 53,000 and change, and also another 1,000 from the prior year. This is prior year amended new growth. The state will give you that information towards the end of your fiscal year. So that raises the levy limit to $7,900. And then in the current year, we've learned that there was prior year new growth of $6,031, and that the assessor confirmed again today to me that we expect an additional $65,000 in revenue from new growth in fiscal 15. This does not include any new growth revenue that we get from the 10K energy project. That project is not underway. It should be underway this year, and we may get additional new growth revenue from new values from that project. But I'm not counting it because we don't have it right now, and we're not completely sure when the project will be generating electricity. So what we get is a levy limit then of projected levy limit of $8,424,000, and included in the levy limit is any debt exclusions or capital exclusions, $867,000, and so the maximum allowable levy, also called the levy limit, in the coming fiscal year should be $9,292,012. Again, we filed the tax recap with the Commonwealth, with the Department of Revenue. We're going to amend it for the new growth numbers that have just come in the last 10 days. State aid, it was $1 million. State aid was $1,435,000 this year, and next year I'm projecting a modest increase, and basically that's based on the pattern here. Local receipts is going to see a big jump, and a big part of that is the $242,000 that we are getting in reimbursements, for the $500,000 design monies for the projected new elementary school. That reimbursement will come in this year, is coming in. I guess all the papers have been filed. So we expect a big bump there, and you'll notice next year, unfortunately, it goes down again. So we go from here to here and then back to here. So we're losing not only the 242, but some additional local receipts. These are fees, charges that we get from building permits, and also included is the automobile or motor vehicle tax that's included there. That's the big item. So now, in addition to, here's the fun, your tax levy, your debt exclusions, your state aid, your local fees and charges, and then you take available funds. You take available funds, and it can also be used to fund your operating budget. This year, as with last year, current year and next year, no free cash. So that hazard, that problem, and you can see the problem. So your free cash in 2012 was $686,000. And because you can't predict it, it goes up, it goes down. It fell off the cliff in 13 and really went down again in 14. And so part of the budget problem last year was the decline in the amount of free cash, which then caused part of the budget problem. So, I think the selectmen and I agree that the best policy is not to use free cash to operate, but rather use free cash for one-time purchases or capital purchases. The ambulance fund, we anticipate $180,000 again next year. Overlay surplus, we're not using any of that either, although I believe there is some. Electric department contribution, as you can see, was 100, 150, and then in the current year, it was $31,552. We have already had some discussions about next year. I've had some discussions with the manager, and there again, I put that number in there. I hope that that's a reasonable figure. And so we're going to add this amount in so-called available funds, and taking it down further, we can see that the total revenue to the town next year is projected $13,325,000. That's up that amount, $155,000. Now, in addition to the revenue that comes in, revenue gets taken away. And so these are offsets and charges that we must pay. Cherry sheet offsets, some money comes in on the cherry sheet and goes directly to the department. The library, for example, gets about $10,000 on the cherry sheet. We don't see it. It's money that they can spend, but it goes directly to them. And so we're pulling that out because it's included in the cherry sheet number up above. So we're taking out, projected $11,000. Cherry sheet charges, those are the fees and charges that the state charges back to the town, and all towns for that matter, for services that they provide. Now, here's something important. As you can see, I have no idea what the Monty Tech assessment is going to be next year, and I don't have any idea what the Narragansett Regional School District assessment is going to be, so I level funded them. That's something we want to talk about tonight, obviously, with the school committee. Cherry sheet overlay deficits, we had one example of that this year, but we're hoping we don't have another snow and ice deficit. Unpaid bills we're going to take care of at the special town meeting. Contribution to stabilization. Up here, you recall that we got $31,000 from the Light and Water Department. Well, we didn't put that into the general fund. At the town meeting, the special town meeting in July, we put that into the stabilization fund. And we've upped the allowance for abatements. The assessors have said to us that we have underfunded the allowance for abatement in recent years, and it should go to that level. So we've increased it. All said and done, it looks like the town will have $7,419,896 remaining funds after this. However, and that's a 3.27% increase. Keep in mind that's a false number because we haven't taken out the assessments for the two school districts. So when we take out the assessments for the two school districts, the number here, which will be the number remaining for the town government, will be, I would assume, significantly less. Now, these numbers here are also hyperlinked back here. This is the worksheet. As you can see, we have the unrestricted general government aid that every city and town gets. I've raised that only $10,000. Veterans benefits are going up because veteran services are going up in town. This number is roughly the same. Please note this number, state-owned land. Look at this. In fiscal 14, the town received $114,000 as an offset or as compensation for lands that the state owns. We are now faced with the prospect that the Templeton Development Center is going to close. There will be additional services required of the town. Simultaneously, the amount of money we get for state-owned land went from 114 down to 82. We've conveyed this to our state representatives and our state senator. They understand this, and they understand that state aid can't go down and services provided by the town can't increase, and that doesn't equate, it doesn't make sense. Here's the offset, the cherry sheet offset for the library, for example. Down here are the fees and charges that we anticipate. Cars are selling, so I raised this number to 930. Keep in mind that 2 years ago it was 948. So I'm hoping that's a conservative number there. All these other numbers are the same. This number here is a big one. That's the money that we get from the enterprise funds for benefits that we pay, and then they reimburse us. And then keep in mind, here's the 242 that we received this year for reimbursement for the debt exclusion for the school design. We will not get it next year. So next year you can see the amount of fees and charges go down. Those of you who have the electronic spreadsheet, if you see those little arrows there, if you just highlight the arrow, it'll remind you of this money is about $25,000. Anybody know what 25 contributed by the schools is? It's their contribution for snow removal. Okay, and then I have a section on, these are the state assessments, $53,000 total. These are monies that we have to contribute to regional transit and other purposes. Now, here's an interesting set of figures here. What I've done is I've taken the base operating budget for 15, and I've increased it by 1%. It's $131,000. The total is $13,301. Here's our revenue estimate. And if we increase spending on the town side by 1%, we get a surplus or deficit of 24,000 surplus. If we go to 1.5 right now, it looks like it'll create a deficit of 41,000. So right now, given what we know about revenue, a 1% increase seems to be where we're going to be on the town side. Now, this last page is, I hope, some useful data on the town's financial circumstances. First of all, total valuation is going up. The assessor told me today that it's going from $540 million to $544.1. It was $540.6. It's going to be $544.7. So that's good news. The town is getting new growth. Our levy limit is $8,957,081. The tax rate currently is 16.24. If we approve the two overrides that are on the ballot in November, if those are approved, and the financial orders that are on the warrant are approved, the tax rate will be 16.44. Actually, I believe it'll be a little less than that, but that's a conservative number. $1 on the tax rate is $544,000. So every time you add $544,000 in spending, you add $1 to the tax rate. And stabilization fund currently has $70,000 in it. We don't have our free cash certified. We expect that that'll be done by the Department of Revenue right prior to setting the tax rate. Equalized value, that's our debt limit if we wanted to be borrowing. None of this is important, but what I've included on the electronic spreadsheet is this little tax rate calculator. So there's your total assessed value. If you give me a number, let's say if we're going to increase the taxes by $20,000, what you do is put $20,000 in there, and that'll give you the impact on the taxes. So $20,000 in new spending is 4 cents on the tax rate. So if you want to play around with spending figures. That's the summary, Mr. Chairman. Anybody else? Questions?
I just have two quick things. The first is regarding the 1% increase in the 24,000. Is that assuming that the school district and the VOTAC, is that assuming that they're level funded, or does it not take into account?
Doesn't take into account that.
Okay. And then the other thing that I had was just a comment. I just want to thank the town administrator and the current financial team for all of their work. If you notice, we're expected to have our free cash certified 6 months earlier than we had it certified last year. So I just want to thank them for the work that they've done, and we can see that we are not just taking small steps forward, but leaps forward when it comes to increasing efficiency and getting on the ball with when I say we, I mean not us, I mean the town and our employees for where that we should be. So I want to thank you for your work on that. If anybody has any questions? Yeah, sure.
Bob, on the revenue estimates on the levy limit, you got that from the assessors, correct?
All of these, all this data from 12, 13, 14, and 15, taken off the tax recap file of the Department of Revenue,
Okay.
including the fees and charges, the local. What happens is on the tax recap, they give you the actual fees and charge revenue from the prior year. So those numbers are correct.
I'm just concerned, so that levy limit figure will not change.
The levy limit will change if we have any change in new growth.
In new growth.
In new growth. Apart from that, it doesn't change. Or, I'm incorrect there, if the voters decide after the town meeting, if the selectmen call an election and there's a debt exclusion, and the voters approve that, that will change the levy limit. So in general, if it's not new growth and if it's not an override or a debt exclusion, the levy limit doesn't change. If the voters approve in November those two items, the $27,000 for assistants for assessors and for town clerk, and the $58,000 for raises for town employees, that will change the levy limit as well. In other words, it just increases it.
Yes.
So we're projecting that we can have a 1% increase in spending without having a deficit. But things that we know are going to increase, like Worcester County,
Yes.
insurances, those types of things.
Yes.
Do we have an anticipation of what those are going to increase? They're going to probably exceed 1%.
Well, yes. I feel at this point that the town can save significant dollars by rebidding both insurance contracts, which, as you know, we're preparing to do. And while there will be some increases, it's hard to predict. We're into the low single numbers. The basic problem that every city and town has is that those fixed costs for benefits are increasing at above the rate of revenue increase. And so in order to accommodate, let's say, a 3 or 4% increase in health care and health insurance costs, you got to squeeze everybody else. So, everybody is in that place right now. We haven't bid the insurance contracts for a while. I'm convinced that the general liability insurance can go down, will go down when the bidding happens. And health insurance is different, it's more difficult, but I do believe that there will be savings available without diminishing the quality of the health care that the town provides.
Yes.
Yes. Does the town, are there any restrictions on the use of stabilization account funds by the town because of our fiscal
No.
costs? So,
2/3 vote, we can do anything with it we want. I think it's a bad idea to use it for operating, obviously, because, that's one-time money, and you have to do it every year. So I don't include any money for stabilization in the operating budget.
Is there any?
In fact, I think if we have, this is something we haven't mentioned at this point, if we are able to get significant free cash certified, I would certainly recommend that we use a significant amount of that to move to stabilization. And then secondly, we need to talk about OPEB, which I know the advisory board has talked about in the past. But we need to talk about starting to provide some fund
How does that happen?
other
gonna ask
benefits that we
They
owe
have
to
some other things that are,
retirees.
why is it
You have to
going up
carry on
when
your
it's
balance
always,
sheet,
it's
maybe
gone
you
down?
have to
I
fund.
mean,
So we should talk about making a contribution to that, and maybe a contribution to
it just seems
stabilization.
like a lot.
And let's say if the town gets $500,000 in free cash
This is gonna
certified,
be gone. I mean, what are we
not
gonna do in the
spend
following year?
more than 100 or
$1
150
million
to do the rest.
in FY '17.
Yes.
The payments for local receipts, the payments and interest penalties on taxes, since we're doing the tax title,
Yes.
is that 95,000 realistic?
Is it not, yes. In other words, if we in fact sell, we will sell about half.
So there'll still be,
You may
okay.
have a point, we may have to adjust that.
That just seems high.
Yeah, after, well, there's a tremendous amount of tax delinquency, over $800,000. And if we cut that in half with an auction, we'd still be seeing some revenues. The other thing that's happening, and Kate can affirm this, because I've talked to her twice today about this, people are coming in and they'll pay up before the tax title auction. And when they pay up, we collect interest as well, so.
Okay.
But that may have to be adjusted, you may be right there. We may have to see how much we sell in tax title, because we won't be gaining interest on that anymore.
Did you have anything else you wanted to?
I have questions, but I'm going to save them.
Okay. Does anyone else have any other questions regarding the presentation? If not, I'd like to thank Bob for his work on this. And at this time, as it's 6:30, or a little after, I'd like to welcome the Templeton Advisory Board, the Narragansett Regional School Committee, and also the Templeton Elementary School Building Committee to our meeting. So thank you all for coming. We appreciate your participation. As we know, communication has been an oft-cited issue in the past, and rightly so, regarding issues around the budget formulation process. So we thought that this would be a great opportunity for everyone to kind of start the communication, see where we are, so we're not, when it comes to an override at the annual town meeting, suddenly, panicking at the last minute. So I think that this is definitely a step in the right direction. I surmise that the presentation, Mr. Administrator, that sums up basically where we are in terms of the town's finances. So we can see that, I don't know if the advisory board has anything that they would like to kick us off by commenting on the budget before we move to the school committee, or?
I have one particular comment. I looked at the 1% increase that the administrator had put in, and as I stated in the pre-town, I strongly believe that we need to take and end up paying our employees more. I feel very uncomfortable about the override, and I think out of that 1%, we should really consider that about $60,000 of that money should be for raises when we end up actually setting the goals for the budget process for the departments.
Just one other point to be made. When the governor releases his budget in January, we'll be adjusting the local aid projection. I don't know where that's going to be. I know that the unemployment rate has ticked up some in the state, which means they'll be collecting somewhat fewer revenues. But it remains to be seen exactly how much additional local aid we get, or maybe we don't get any at all. But I think at the minimum, we get level funded. So.
Did the advisor, do you have anything else that you want to advisory board or any members at this time regarding?
I just
Sure.
do want to make a quick comment back to Mr. Markle's statement about OPEB and the fact that, we really haven't done anything in that area before. And I think as the cities and towns, people are retiring now in bigger and larger numbers, and the liabilities that the cities and towns have becoming larger and larger and larger. And I think it'll be a good year for us to start looking at how we're going to handle that.
Yes, sure.
This was discussed, I did attend the annual meeting of the advisory board committees for the state, and this was a topic that was covered in detail, and I have a few ideas, probably no solution, but it's certainly an important topic that needs to be explored further.
Thank you. The school committee, I don't, if you have anything that you would like to add or contribute about what your goals are in the budgeting process, where you see, I mean, obviously the process has not yet begun in earnest, but I don't know if you have discussed any goals or objectives that you have in the upcoming year that we should be aware of, just so that we know kind of what's coming and when it's possible to know.
Yes. We've just begun our budget process, and it's changing. We're bringing a lot of data into the budget process. So at this point, it's a newly begun process, so we're anxious to hear from the town boards tonight. And so that's our purpose, and as soon as we do have some direction, hopefully we can meet again like this.
Okay. Yes.
I have a question for the school committee and the budget subcommittee. When would we be first meeting?
Our budget subcommittee our finance committee has actually started to meet to form as Mr. Robinson said, our goals, so that we haven't yet finalized the dates that we will then extend to the whole town as we build that.
Some of the questions that I had were, will the end of the year report be available to look at? I believe it's due in the end of October.
It is due the end of October, because we're looking at federal money that couldn't be certified till the end of October. So once that's done, the report is public information.
Okay, so that'll be available to everyone?
That gets to it's a matter of getting it certified through the state on all of our accounts, because many of them are federal, some of them are state.
Right.
And they hold us up often in October once we file it.
Okay.
But it should be shortly thereafter, once it's certified.
Right, so
It
mid-November.
will be public information as
Okay.
soon as that is available, yes.
The other question I had is, on the town side, we do a budget to actual almost every week. Do you run a budget to actual?
We do. We had Mrs. Hughes and many new members who joined the committee. Every month, we have an update on our major budget, and that is public information. So we have accounts, we know where we are, which ones are in the red, which ones are not yet being used, so that we can then question them, and that happens every single month.
All right, is that information that we can...
That is public
Okay.
information every month.
Yeah, sure.
I just wanted to say that also at the annual meeting of the State Advisory Board, that was another recommendation, that we not only, that as an advisory board, that we not only are aware of budget to actual within the town, but also the school district's budget, so that, just so that we have a really clear idea where everybody is financially.
And that's what we have, yes.
That'd be great.
Ken?
Yes, John?
I've worked in a lot of towns, been involved in a lot of schools. This is the only place I've ever seen that does it weekly. Most of them do it monthly.
Is there anything else, any questions from any of the board members? If not, we can move on to the Templeton Elementary School Building Committee regarding the proposed new elementary school. I know that we have some guest speakers to inform us kind of where that process is, because obviously being abreast to the expenses and that will be incurred or could be incurred with the project are also going to be a key portion of our budget planning. So I will turn over the floor to the superintendent if she will be introducing the...
Actually, the chair of the...
At the elementary school, yeah, sure. Yes.
I'm the chairman of the elementary school building committee. This is John from Winnetka, the town's over the estimate project, and I'd like to ask permission for him to
Sure.
make a presentation.
Sure.
Hello, everyone. How are you? And this is Tim Alex, also from my office. So, thank you all for having us tonight.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah, I have a bunch of materials to hand out, but let me just give a little bit of overview. I don't know if people around can hear, but I'll try and project my voice as best I can. So, I was before you last as a select board. I believe it was late summer, and we were discussing the issue of the Crow Hill analysis of the property that is available from the state, and some of the estimates that had come in and the limitations with regards to building on that property and the costs and exposures associated with it. We also talked about the recommendation that came forward from the school building committee to go out and to view again what parcels of land may be available in town through a public procurement process to see if a more suitable site might be available to you that would be less expensive and have better options to you. Those proposals came in. 2 formal proposals was submitted per the Massachusetts general law for acquiring land. We had to follow a pretty strict protocol in that regard. This is actually the 3rd time you've been through this process since you began looking to fix your elementary schools in 2009. The 2 parcels I'll talk about in just a second. One of those had been submitted previously in 2011 and had been evaluated at that time, or 2012, and then we had a new parcel that was put into the mix. In terms of the property and in terms of how we thought we would discuss it today, we want to go through 5 different options, because really our hope is that you have been looking at this. A lot of people have been volunteering time and efforts in the state. The MSBA, Massachusetts School Building Authority, who I represent as well, have been studying this since 2009. Volunteers and others have been looking at this far longer than that, and really you're at a stage where you've exhausted virtually all of your options. Your options are all on the table. All of your options are expensive, and certainly relative to the other financial pressures that the communities are facing. And it's something that needs to be understood, and frankly, it would be wise to make a decision now as to whether you want to proceed forward with any of the options available to you. If you do, then obviously a great deal of study and effort needs to happen prior to bringing something forward to the taxpayers. But it feels like a pretty good juncture to at least evaluate with all of these good minds together and to have some candid discussion about what you think might be best to address the school issues. I think from what I've heard publicly at least, no one disagrees about the need to do something with the schools. The conditions by the state's evaluation, by all the architects and engineers and administrators, evaluations are in a very significant level of need. It's just a matter of how best to address it. So I'm going to ask Tim to pass that from this side, this document, and I'll walk everyone through it.
We can share. Thank you. They're all
Here, we can share, so if you want to know.
Oh, yeah. What do we do with the kids when you put them in school? I don't know, I have to figure it out. I think there's some options for that.
Very last one.
I'm glad to see that that's on there, but it's sad that it's that. Well, it's not really that much more than that, if you think about it, it's donated land. We don't
Let me
have
walk
to
us
know.
through what we are, and I'm going to just show
That's
how
gonna
this
be an
layout
expense,
works, and
too.
then everyone should get the hang of it relatively quickly. What we have going across the top are the 5 parcels that are out there. Several of these are previously known. The very first one, Crow Hill, the property that's available through the state. The DCAM
$5
offer
million.
to pass that property to you. The Brooks Road property is one of the new proposals that came in. This had previously been submitted. It's the Matusowitz family. I might be messing up my pronunciation, but I believe it's 5 parcels that are being offered to put together for about 53 acres, possibly. The Brooks family property, this is the original property that started the whole project back in 2009, where the family was offering to donate it for the exclusive purpose of building a school. One of the new parcels that was just submitted on is 411 Baldwinville Road, or the MBW salvage site, I think is the correct name for that. And then the Templeton Center School, the location of your Karen, one of the Karen Elementary Schools is the other parcel that we've evaluated. What I've done is just a purely financial analysis up on the top, and I'll start at the far left with the Crow Hill property, and we put some cost ranges on these. The cost ranges come from several different factors. We looked at every elementary school that's been built or planned in the state of Massachusetts that's of similar size. And the size that we're talking about is for pre-K through 5th grade population for 580 kids, and it's going to be around 93,000 square feet. So we looked at every project between 80 and 100,000 square feet. We looked at what the costs were for all the different consultants, all the site work, all the development costs, the building costs, and we also had some independent construction cost estimates put together for the Crow Hill property. So that gave us more information to look at what it would really take. And we had a lot of engineering analysis done up at Crow Hill as well. So the land acquisitions, I'm going to start with hard costs. People are pretty familiar. This is what you hear about a lot when people talk about building costs, what it takes to actually construct a building. But then there's all these soft costs that are very important too. These are the associated costs, what it takes to build them. So let me just describe the left-hand side first so that we know what the categories are as we go through them. Land acquisition is self-explanatory. Do we have to buy this parcel or is it given to us? Site work. We have 2 different categories of site work. Special site development, and this includes getting sewer lines to the facility, getting water to the land, getting electricity to the land, or anything else that we might need. In some cases, we need to widen roads or develop turning areas that are important to do demolition and to deal with crossings of wetlands or replacement of wetlands that might be disturbed. Then we have building site work. Building site work is typical within 5 feet of the structure, just to clear out the areas so that we can get our foundations in and to build the building. And then we have building construction. So this is the big part of putting up the new building, pouring those foundations, putting the steel in, putting brick on the sides or a roof on the building, the windows, the walls, etc. The soft costs then have fees and expenses, the architect's fees, engineering fees, the project management expenses, permitting fees, all those sorts of things, furniture, fixtures, and equipment, and then contingencies and that total. Then we have on the far left the potential MSBA reimbursement. You've got to remember that obviously they're funding a large portion of this project potentially, and so we're trying to evaluate what those costs might be to give you a potential net cost. All right, so let's just start with Crow Hill. Land acquisition costs are nothing. This is potentially donated by the site for the purpose of an elementary school, but we have an incredible amount of special site work up here. We don't have utilities within a mile of the property, so we've got to do a significant amount of running of water lines, of electric lines to it. We've got to widen the roads and create turning lanes out there, and then we've got to get on a 10-degree grade across a very large parcel of land. We've got to create roadways going up the parcel to an area that's suitable to build the school before we can even do the blasting and get the siting for the school. So the range that we've identified, I didn't put a range on here because it's been identified by our cost estimators and engineers as we've studied this one. So we said $5 million is really what the cost is for just extraneous sorts of development costs on this parcel of land. The building site work costs, now to actually build that building, we have a range of $2 to $5 million. That's what we've seen again and again and again with all the school properties that we've evaluated. And then the building construction costs, I put a range of 25 to 30 million. We haven't really talked about the quality levels of the building, what types of materials on the exterior and the interior, but we know that dollar per square foot wise, from what we've seen again across the state and all the projects, we're working on about 20 school projects across the state. We know what the cost dollar per square foot is likely to be, and it would need to be inflated with time. Then we have soft cost ranges. These are frankly just a derivative of the hard cost. There's a percentage applied to the hard cost that tells us what the soft cost will be within a likely range. Furniture, fixture, and equipment, there's $1 per student allowance from the state of $2,400 that we use at the low end. The high end is something that a lot of districts want to do more than what the state minimum is. And so that's what I used as the range. And then contingencies for construction issues that will arise, I used a range of 7 to 10% for the common percent. So for Crow Hill, we know that that total cost is going to be between $41 million, $40,900,000, and $55,100,000. We also know by the state rules, a lot of it is non-reimbursable because all the site development cost is non-reimbursable. Anything above 8% of the building costs, anything that's not on the site of the school is non-reimbursable. And so therefore, we expect the reimbursement to be between $20.4 million and $25.6 million. So a net project cost range of 20.5 to 29.5. I just took the average for simplicity's sake and said that it's probably going to cost you $24.5 million net cost to fund the building up at Crow Hill. That clear to everyone? Okay, so I'm going to move a little bit quicker.
I have just one basic, and this is across the board. You said 9,300 square feet for the building, and that's each of the proposals that you're going to be talking about.
Yeah.
My next question is, how does that square footage compare to the buildings we have today? Is that more or less
It's about twice as much as what you have today.
between the two buildings?
Between the two buildings combined. They are so grossly undersized by any standard, and this building would just meet the MSBA set standards on every room size, and if you ever exceed a standard, most districts do, honestly, it becomes non-reimbursable, but this is just saying you're just going to get the base minimum of what you want. The administration has been satisfied with that. Frankly, it's so much better than anything that you've got now. I didn't bring it. If you wanted to move forward, I think it would be worth spending time on current conditions so everyone is aware of what you have versus what most districts have for your kids. But okay, does that make sense generally speaking about the dollar side? Then the bottom side, if I could just a second, well, let me go through the others. All right, so the Brooks Road property, this is one that was evaluated. We didn't, on these new properties, they came in a couple weeks ago, we didn't do any engineering evaluation or real design evaluation. Some work had been done several years ago. We took a broad brush look. We had discussions with the engineers to evaluate it. They brought up land records and some other information. But basically, we had a sense of what those costs would be and what it would be. So the Matusowicz's property, that is bisected just like the Brooks family property with wetlands everywhere. That's the most fundamental problem with this property. It's got terrific parcel size of 53 acres, and they suggest that maybe 30 to 50% of it is wetlands, which would be terrific if it was all segregated into a corner of the property. Unfortunately, it weeds and wags its way through the whole property. It doesn't allow much buildable space to get a school, to get parking areas, to get playgrounds. So that's difficult, but we believe that the cost would be, including the purchase price, the net cost would be about $21.8 million. The Brooks property, I'm evaluating again to see if it makes sense as compared. It certainly makes sense compared to the seemingly free Crow Hill property. It was a great effort by the state, but we can see that even that property is significantly less than Crow Hill and would have a net cost of around $21 million. The MBW site, so this is another good parcel of land. Now this one, it's reported, and Kurt knows a lot about this, he's looked at it in the past. We have some preliminary information on it. It does not have the same wetlands issues as the properties on the backside of it on Baldwinville Road, on Brooks Road have. But it does have some wetlands back there. Basically, for anyone who's familiar with it, and I've looked at a bunch of areals of it, it's got kind of a skinned area that they use. The whole parcel is around 23 acres of land, and maybe half of it is usable. It's got some frontage, obviously, it's near the other schools, so it's got that. And they're asking $750,000 for that parcel, so $750,000. We don't know environmental conditions that we put in terms of building site work and special site work, a big range of $250,000 to $1.5 million, assuming there's going to be some cleanup. How cleanup would ever get handled and what cleanup is needed, obviously we have no idea. It's just trying to establish a range to get a sense.
This is the site that was a salvage yard.
Correct.
So you expect some contamination there?
We do.
250 seems like
Is even the high end realistic, $1.5 million? Is it low ball? Is it, should we expect more?
Well, we don't know. I mean, this is the perfectly honest, we don't know. We're in conversation with the team, so I don't know if everyone heard that. The question is, the property is is our range of a $40 million to $9.5 million low ball estimate could be consistently we think that, based upon some verbal discussions, very preliminary, that it's about a right range. We really don't know what's out there. We heard that cars were wrecked there and disassembled. We don't know what seeped into it. We know we've got to do full engineering studies to do it. We know there could be some significant exposures there, but I don't know if it's the right range or not. But it seemed like
Seems too low.
a good spot to be.
Especially
In your
he
experience,
gets
have you ever seen a salvage yard
Yeah.
cleaned up for $1.5 million?
I've never seen a salvage yard cleaned up for a school to go on, so
Exactly.
I've never experienced it. The final parcel that we looked at was the Templeton Center School site. Now, this is obviously a familiar site. It is small. It had been looked at previously and discarded because of its size. And we tested it, and I want to pass out something for all of you to see also. But we know we have it. We know more about what the issues are and aren't, and we know in all likelihood this is the least expensive option for you. It's got some drawbacks, though. We think that the cost range would be under $20 million to do this. These are all still, as I said at the beginning, still significant costs. If your starting point is $20 million and going up, I think the fundamental question for you is this a number that's even worth taking forward? Because now you're going to start to spend real money. You're going to bring something to the taxpayers if you take this next step of saying we should move forward with one of these. We're going to spend a lot of money to really investigate it, to analyze it, and then we're going to spend a lot of effort, goodwill, heartache, and discussion, having many, many heated debates with everyone else in the community about whether it's the right thing to spend your money on. So again, I ask you to very seriously think about the magnitude of dollars. All of these properties have merits and positives and different considerations. We put some of them that we've been talking about with the planning group down at the bottom. So the location of the property, whether or not we have enough parking out on that site, or how it would be squeezed, the playgrounds, do we have enough room for playgrounds? All the playgrounds we would like, all the playing fields we would like, and any special permitting requirements that we may have to go through. So as you can see, we use simple negatives to show that it's not necessarily as good as the others, and a positive to say that it seems to rank better than some of the others. So the Crow Hill, its location is definitely not ideal for many reasons, but it's got a lot of space for parking, playgrounds, fields. We've got a lot of special permitting and a lot of other issues we've got to deal with, and obviously the cost is the highest. The Metusa property, we believe location to be good and parking to be good, but we think with the wetlands issues and everything else, we're going to have issues with fields, playgrounds, and permitting. The same for the Brooks Road property. The salvage, we don't know. We certainly expect the permitting to be an issue once we truly understand what it is there. But it has more space than 10 to 15 acres, let's say, usable. And then the Templeton Center School is the best in terms of price, location, and permitting, but its drawbacks are obviously the issues of space. All right, so I just wanted to hand out quickly a test. We've been testing this all idea. Tim, I'm going to ask you to consider the whole idea with the designers of could the TC site really work? What could it look and feel like? This is very preliminary, but I think we felt like it was the least expensive option. We ought to really give you something to think about.
All the wetlands, and you could still have this, it's not ideal.
So it's not the same issue here?
No, because they don't have wetlands coming back to the property to build the school. These two would have that.
You know this number's gonna go up because of the wetlands. So when is the other social school inside? Okay, so I put an 80 because of all the positives, but I'm like, so you would, the school would know it's got a playground.
It doesn't still have playgrounds, it's just that it's not an ideal situation.
I don't know, they're saying like it's a negative, like, so really, all these numbers stand.
Okay, so can I just walk everyone through this? I know it's hard to read, I apologize.
I would still.
I have been having discussions, the chairman and superintendent had asked me when we got the prices back on Crow Hill, we were looking at other properties, to just exhaust the possibilities of TC sites. And so I've been working with the design team to just test at a high level the square footage. Now that we know the square footage and general parking requirements, could it fit? at a high level, or might it not, and then, you know, what would that trade-off be?
Goes all the way
So they did a series of different iterations of the school on here, and this is one of them. It is by no means,
it's
as
the
I say,
police
an exhaustive
station,
study or
right.
figured everything out, but it's just showing what
It's
could
the police
possibly be.
station.
So I know it's hard to read, I'm gonna take my glasses off.
Yeah, right here.
The outline in red is the property bounded by South Avenue and Wellington Road. Everyone's familiar with it. You can see the existing school that's in there. That roof is what's there. And then they're showing this new building that would be a 3-story building. Right now, you've got like a 2.5-story building out there. So this would be a bit taller than that, with some of it on South Road, trying to kind of build around the existing building and then take it down back on the site towards Wellington. Where the main classroom wing in this case would be. This would all be around, and obviously, if everyone needs to go forward with something like this. The suggestion was that parking, we need several things. We need to get parking, we need to get buses in there safely, and to make sure that the parents can drop the kids off, and the buses can come in and drop the kids off safely. That's a problem, obviously, when we've got a small site, and ideally to get playing fields and to get playground areas. This, one of the options, and this is something that we haven't had any discussions with police, obviously the police station is right there. They've got some area where they have some kind of stranded parking, unpaved parking in the back. Perhaps we could reach agreement with them where we could pave that area in a very safe way and have it dedicated for some teacher parking or something. Get some parking spaces over there. That's what's outlined in blue, if everyone can see that, the very thin blue line. It's really hard to read in this light too. And then they're suggesting that perhaps parking could go, the rest of the land, as you can see, could be for some parking and play area. They outline play area in here to be that existing area, and maybe parking goes up at the top where the existing playground is. We know we'd want to save the playground, the new playground that went in, either it gets relocated or something to make sense of a good investment that just went in. But I think from a big standpoint, one of the ideas was that perhaps the buses could queue on South Road, we could have a pull-off area in front of the school to make sure that the kids and all the buses could be on one side and the parent drop-off pickup area could be on Wellington Road, so we could really not have the traffic overlapping with one another. These are all things that just really need to get studied and figured out. If you wanted to go forward with something like this, you bring in traffic engineers and analyze.
Just a quick question. From the beginning of demolition through completion, how long would we have to house the students that currently attend that school?
Yeah, that's a good question. Probably 2 years. And where they would go and how to do this, we've had some preliminary discussion. In the high end of the ranges, I suggested that we get portable classrooms, and that's why I had the building construction cost in this one. I had higher than in any of the other ones, and all of the others, I have 25 million to 30 here, I have 25 million to 31 million. What we find is that portable classrooms, we have them on many sites, projects we're doing, $100,000 per classroom plus 20% for the design costs, the contingencies, et cetera. So I'm carrying an extra $1 million at the high end. There are discussions that, number one, could we figure out a design? If you wanted to move forward with something like this, the best option would be to keep that building in place fully functional while construction goes on. We do that probably 75% of the time. We just have to work with the designers to do that. Or the other case is there some room in some of the other schools that we could house some of the kids and then do a smaller scale portables?
That's really just.
We don't know, we haven't tested it thoroughly enough. And I've taken in terms of a cost, the approach that we're probably going to end up buying half of the portables because I averaged the two costs together.
What about, would this displace any private homeowners?
It would not. This is all within the boundaries of the property, of your current property. I think we obviously want to have discussions with the property owners around here. At least the good thing is it's a school and we're close to the school, but I have always found personally that the surrounding property owners never like it when there's new construction happening next door. And it's going to be a bigger building, more kids coming to the school, so we'll have more traffic there that we have to think about and talk about. See a hand over here too?
I don't mind the idea of this, but if you've been up there even right now, you can tell you, the traffic's a disaster right now.
It is a disaster.
The way it is, you can't even get up there now in the afternoon to pick up kids. There's no room right now. so this is not on the west side of traffic.
Well, so I think everyone heard the comment about the traffic, and I think that that's something we know. We know as part of the process, traffic engineers have to come in, and we really have to figure out, can it work? How do you do the timing? How do you do those things? We haven't gone through
How
that
many
level of
projects do
analysis
they do where they actually,
to look at it yet.
I'm gonna
It's
ask.
a good point. I mean, it's 580
I just think it's too disruptive.
cases.
How many projects do you do that you actually keep the children on the site
Yeah, probably 75% of them.
and it's not disruptive
Yes, it's disruptive, but.
for 2 years?
Moving out of the school is disruptive. Any project is disruptive unless you go to a clean site and build a new school, and most communities would never
Wow.
do that unless it was a last resort, to be honest with you.
And I know that we've already addressed the parking, but I'm sure that you're aware of this, but just to point out to anyone who may not know that, on one boundary of the property is the fire station, and then in the back corner, also on South Road, is the police station. So obviously, any traffic issues, that road would have to be able to be made clear for emergency services that need to come in and out of there as well. But
And we can certainly, again, I wanted to bring this forward.
Oh, sure.
Because we've been asked to test this. Obviously, there are clean sites options also. They have trade-offs as well, but some of those trade-offs, just as you're starting to think about, are obvious. You get more land, you're not disrupting anything. It's just a matter of money. Can I start with the most basic question, of the $20 million question? Is $20 million an acceptable figure to take forward to the public? And it would hit the tax rolls if this was voted positively, just to be very practical about it. You would submit this to the state a year from now for approval. And, well, let's say you would bring it forward to the taxpayers a year from now for their approval. Let's say it's 20 to 25 million. It would then go into design for a year, so through 2016, it would be in design, start construction the end of 16, 17, 2018, the fall of 2018, roughly speaking, would be when the building would open, and it would hit the tax rolls with the full impact. You're going to do short-term borrowing or something during that process, but that's when it would hit. And obviously, you need to think about your other tax impacts and everything else that's going on. But I really think it's an important fundamental question: is the 20 to 25 million, is that an affordable level, or is it worth pursuing?
And if I could just put the town administrator on the spot, because I did not ask him about this previously, do we know kind of, just in general terms, what the impact would be to the tax rate and how long?
I'd assume a 30-year bond.
That's your choice.
Yeah.
Those places are 20 to 30 years.
Yep. I would think that, given the life of the school would be 30 years at least, that you want the taxpayers of all 30 of those years to be paying. So you want to have a length of your bond correspond with the useful life of the building. So at 30 years, I can't.
I just did some rough calculations.
Yeah.
Looks like it'd be about $1.25
Oh, about $1
for 30 years,
$1 what?
$1.25 about for 30 years.
roughly.
Other than that, I mean, I guess the only other point to be made is that this is the best time to borrow.
Right.
But by the time we get to that point, it may not be.
It may not be.
And also, if I can just point out, the original reimbursement, had this project moved forward years and years ago, was, what, 80% roughly? And now, I mean, what was it roughly?
60.
Oh, it's always been 60.
Yeah.
The base rate is 60, and depending upon how to do it, we can build it up to perhaps, so I've used a blended 60% rate on this, so not everything was reimbursable. The land acquisition is not reimbursable, site costs beyond a certain percentage. But you can build it up to pick up another, let's say, 5 to 10 reimbursement points from the state.
Maybe I'm not, this project obviously has been delayed for years and years and years and years. Was not our original reimbursement, had we done this a decade ago or whenever, was it not at a higher rate?
Yes, it was 80.
That's what my question is. It was 80% then, right?
It was 80.
Not for this project.
Not for this, a new elementary school, let's say, just,
Before
right.
MSBA got reorganized, we were almost at 80%.
Right. So we are now at 60%, plus give or plus. So I guess my point being is that in 10 years from now, if we put this off for another decade,
We're
it is,
done.
it is unlikely that our rate will be going up at all of reimbursement, and it will inevitably cost more in terms of lack of reimbursement. I mean, is that a safe assumption to make? That the longer we drag this out, the less MSBA is willing to bend over backwards to help us?
Again, that's a hard one for me.
Right.
Hypotheticals are difficult for me,
Yeah.
because I have to deal with the policy for
Yeah.
what I know. But I think what I've seen in other districts is what you're describing. I mean, between the borrowing costs and construction costs all being relatively low, it seems like if it's affordable, that's always the question that I deal with. That it's got to be affordable fundamentally, otherwise it's going to fail anyway. And
Yep.
there will be
Does
incredible
this make all
frustration
our
for
borrowing
money
for the
spent.
school? Can you ask that question?
But it
Does the
is the
school
best
get all our
time to be
borrowing?
borrowing and building.
To us, because it's our project.
Based upon
Does it
what
tie
some of the
to
schools that are being built now,
Our town needs.
there seems to be a general trend to have them exceed the actual estimates of what the cost of the building is. Is that figured into here, or?
Well, I use the ranges, I haven't seen that as a trend, to be honest with you. All of our projects have been under budget, so we've never had a case where they've been over with the Mass School Building Authority project. The rules and regulations are really, really strict with how you have to go through this, where you actually have to do two independent estimators. So people who were just trained to look at what the cost of electricians are, how much copper costs, drywall costs, windows, et cetera, will be hired at 4 different junctures along the way, right up to bid stage. And you give them all the materials, all the drawings, and you have them price it out, and we've got to come back to budget before we take a step forward, otherwise the MSBA will not keep you in the program. So you're forced to be in budget and up to bid date, right before you go out to bid, and what we found is that that's a very...
Yeah, but I've seen some schools here in the last couple of years have gone over budget. That's inevitable, that sometimes that happens.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, that's where you want real numbers, instead of what
Yep.
inflation is and the cost. We've been lucky.
The range of values, it's quite large, right? I mean, on the low end, you're like just over 40%. You have 40% contingency and the potential net project costs, and on the high end, it looks like you have like 2/3.
Not contingency, no.
But it's not contingency, it's the net, it's the variation from the low and the high of the potential net costs.
So the potential, yeah, because at the high end, remember that it's mostly the site costs that run up $2 to $5 million, let's say, is the typical range we're seeing. So we know the MSBA is only going to reimburse, say, $1.5 million.